Hey, let's continue with authentication, logging a user in using JSON Web Tokens. But first, let me fix some things I forgot in the previous video. One thing here I see is API AuthService. That's a refactoring bug. Let's just revert this to AuthService, not API AuthService, since there's just going to be, I think, one AuthService in the backend at least, not necessarily. In the front end there will also be an AuthService, but let's only make the distinction in the interface. It should be enough. You might get confused if you have both the AuthService of the front end and the one from the back end open in the same editor, but you'll see the code is not similar at all. Confirm user, we forgot something here. Confirm email async, okay. When this succeeds, like I mentioned, okay, something like this. All right, I restarted my computer and Docker is running. So I can access the database, the local database. Okay. Actually, one more thing I forgot to implement is while registering a user is to add a default role. You could argue maybe you don't want default users. You can decide for yourself if you want like a default role like app user or just null, like no role for normal users. Excuse me. You can decide that for yourself. I'm just going to show you how to do it. So here in the try catch, we're going to call the user manager add role async, and the role could either come from a user form, but most of the cases you'll want to decide that internally. And let's see, custom user roles dot, and let's just give it app user role, and that should be all to just give a user a role. Okay. Why I'm doing this now is because this will be, the roles will be included in the JSON Web Tokens with which we'll authenticate a user. So we'll not have to, I'll try to prevent that we'll have to do it afterwards, like puzzle in the role somewhere. Let's just do it straight away. Okay. So the next thing would be to log in. Let's go to our AuthController and paste the code in. I like to put it as the top one. And that should look like this. Just a login method calling the AuthService.login and returning a authentication response. That should be We'll have to return this as a record. Let's do that. I'm returning this user roles. I'll explain that later. Let's see, something like this. Okay. Let's create this login user requests and the common features auth requests. Let's make it a record. And this should just have a string email and a string password. Let me see, can I add a record? Oh yeah, okay. Maybe I should try this one in the future. Okay, so the login request is made. AuthService. Okay. This refactor to API AuthService. Let's not do that. Okay. The next thing is to make the method on the service. Backend project AuthService. Let's make a region. Not that it's that it does a lot for us. The only reason why I'm making regions is because all of this code, there's going to be a lot of code in one file, which isn't that great. For later business logic, we'll probably use Mediator to chop our logic into small files. But this whole auth stuff, we could use Mediator, but since it's all kind of generic and reliant on a lot of things, we're just gonna keep it like that and not chop it up too much. Okay, with the idea that we're just going to do this once and then be done with it. Hopefully. Okay, let's add it to our interface. I'm gonna put this on top. Okay. Oops. Forbidden access exception. I didn't make it yet. Let's do that. Exceptions. Add class for forbidden access exception. It doesn't seem to be crazy implementation. Okay, for bin access exceptions implemented. Sign-in manager. Okay. So what we do is we check if there's an existing user by email. If there isn't, we'll throw an exception. And then we should check whether the password is valid, like the credentials are valid, the combination of is valid, and yeah. Let's inject this sign-in manager. Should be something like this. Sign-in manager. Oops, it happened. I asked to initialize the field. The sign-in manager is also coming from identity framework. And this needs the existing user, the password that is posted through a user forum, at least to our API, and some lookout on failure. That means that if after a few attempts of after a few failed attempts, the account will be locked, something like that. I'm not utilizing that. Could be good to protect against robots trying to brute force their some credentials. But anyway, I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. And then in the end, if everything worked out fine, we'll generate an auth result. This auth result, like we see in the AuthController, contains all these this data. So the access token, the refresh token, the boolean, whether it's successful. Yeah, depending on if it's successful, it will return these, of course. And then the user roles, I think I just included those for convenience, since they're actually also included inside the access token. We'll see it in a bit. Okay, let's make this private method. I'm going to put it in a region on the bottom of the page. Call the region JWT token, since we'll be constructing the token in here. This needs to be response. And oops, here it should be a record true access token fresh token. Yeah, and user roles to list. Come on. Okay. Okay, what's happening here? We're generating a new JWT ID. We're creating a refresh token. Refresh token is used when the access token is expired to generate a new access token. Wait a second. This identity user. Okay, and we're going to store this refresh token in the database. So this is actually an entity we still have to make. This contains this random JWT ID, the user ID coming from the user, and expires at. I made this token live for 6 months. So what happens? Why we use the refresh token is to keep a user logged in, even when the access token expired. So then in the front end, we'll code some functionality that will refresh the access token, so to speak. Yeah, so the user doesn't have to resubmit the login form using his or her credentials. So yeah, DB, we're going to change this to context. Okay, let's maybe start by making this refresh token entity. A couple of things here. I'm not a fan of returning this refresh token to the front end, since this is, yeah, it's not actually meant to be in the front end. And it's kind of pointless because you could actually only use an access token that lives for 6 months. If you want to, that's gonna take a lot less work to implement, and it's going to almost come down to the same in terms of security vulnerabilities. The only benefit this refresh token gives is allowing the access token to only live for a short period of time, like 15 minutes or something. And the only benefit of that would be for the rare scenario that you downgrade a user in permissions. So let's say you accidentally gave a user administrator permissions and you only want the user to have editor permissions. If you then If the user then retrieved an access token, obtained an access token that lives for 6 months, and the user never actively logs out in that period, he would still be administrator for 6 months, at least have those permissions. So that's the only scenario I see why the refresh token, where it forms a benefit, I mean. But actually, you'd want to, like in the Google OAuth 2 or Facebook OAuth 2, the refresh token usually stays in the backend, is not exposed to the front end for security reasons. But yeah, let's just roll with it. It's something I might take time for in the future and maybe make a new video about it if I found a better solution for it. If you know a better solution, please let me know. I think the alternatives are probably an external authentication service, something like that. So yeah, I was thinking about maybe I should create a separate project, API project, web API project for all the authentication related stuff, have its own database. Just for my use case, since I'm going to, because I want multiple APIs with the exact same authentication. So maybe that would be a solution for me, but it's not a solution for keeping this refresh token in the backend or server side or something. That's not a solution, unfortunately. But yeah, let's just implement it like we only have one project, one API, and one front-end project. So don't worry too much about it. If you only have one API, just your AuthService can just live in your API project, and all this code can just live there. Don't worry too much about it. Okay. Let's just implement what we can implement. So the claim stuff. JWT token. Going to copy that. This would be something like this. Let me see if we will definitely have to add some things to the app settings and maybe add some packages. I'll do that in a bit. Let's just try it. This doesn't seem, oops. This doesn't seem to be. Okay. Let's see if we install the correct packages. This would be in the backend project, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, what did it add? Microsoft Identity Model JSON Web Tokens, Identity Model Tokens, Identity Model Tokens.jwt system. Okay. Let me quickly check with my previous project if that is correct. According to the using statements, it seems correct. Okay. Let's quickly make this JWT config so we can build the project. I mean, continue with the refresh token. So let's do this in our API project. Configuration would look something like this. Where you'd add your secret, just a randomized string in here, used for verifying whether tokens are really created by your API, which is important so people can just forge tokens. We'll tell you more about that later. I think it was a common mistake in the passport in JavaScript that people forgot to implement the verify async or the verify method, which checks whether the token is actually constructed using this secret. which is a huge security vulnerability because people could just, yeah, they'd have to, let me think about it. They'd either be able to manipulate a existing token, like possibly changing their roles, their user role if it's included in the token, or other stuff. Or could even, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, could even just come up with their own token, construct their own token. And if you don't verify it, you'll just, yeah, it'll just be accepted, I guess. Okay. Most of the times, of course, it contains a user ID where you find the existing user. So people would already have to know a user ID to forge a token, of course. But if they can do that, they can just log in someone else's name. I mean, just call the backend API in the name of someone else, possibly with more permissions than they would normally have. So the secreting is important. I am going to leave this out of the development one and just paste it in my app settings. Maybe just, no, I'm just going to copy it in my app settings for production, and I'm going to increase this time to live slightly and have another secret. So that means, of course, that you can't use the same token. At least it should mean that you can't use the same token created by your development environment in your production environment, which is, I think, a good thing. So if we know that, I might just, yeah, I'm not going to show it anymore. Yeah, well, chances are you're going to see this anyway. So let me just keep some randomized secret in here, and then I'll make sure I don't show the secret for the production one. Okay, I did that. I copied this into my normal app settings and changed this secret, and I increased this time to live. This means 15 minutes. You can choose how long you want the access token to live. Yeah. I think on most platforms it's probably like maximum 15 minutes, but for our application we won't be as dramatic. So take a few days maybe. So we don't constantly have to call this refresh token logic. Okay. Now we need to implement this JWT config. I am going to, in the backend project, of course. Already have a config folder. Config. And this just has we can't make a record of this one probably because we'll bind it, I mean configure it to the services. Secret and I think this is also a string. TTL, time to live. Okay, and then now we'll have to add this one private read only. Of course, we'll have to configure it. JWT config initialize field, but this is going to be an iOptions one again. iOptions. Make sure you fix that, and then access the value here. Okay. So we'll have to configure this one similarly as the front-end config. I'll just change this JWT config. All right. So this should be good. Only it says TTL should be time span. Okay, let's fix that real quick. Time span. Okay. Okay, so all this code is ready. Let's quickly go through it. So, where is this called? When we want to create an access token. If you don't know what an access token is, JSON Web Token, there's enough internet sources you can find out what it is, what it does. Okay, create JSON Web Token. This method, the user ID, the JWT ID is just this newly generated one, and the claims is just like the user roles. I'm passing these. So here I'm getting the user roles from this user, which is gonna be at this point either none or just the app user one. The default one. Claims with roles is just returning, transforming these roles into a claims object. Claim is actually the object that the underlying object of either a user role, a policy, or what's the other one? A claim, I guess. Yeah. User claim. Anyway, we're passing those. Just see it as the roles for now. We're getting our secret and encoded to a byte array from our JWT config. Then we are constructing a list of claims. On most examples, you'll see this thing I commented out, but that didn't work, like the subject. So we're using claim types .name identifier. That's just what I'll show you later when we deconstruct the token. It's just gonna be like name or ID or whatever and contain the user ID. This is important, however, every time you want to decode the token, you'll want to access this one to get the user ID, to get the correct user, and so on. Add a new claim. This is just this newly generated JWT ID. And then we map this to some kind of security token descriptor object. The subject is the new claims identity containing all of the above. Expires is what we added in our configuration, so it should be like either 15 minutes or a few days. And sign-in credentials, which encrypts our secret, which uses our secret to add some kind of algorithm to make sure our access token can't be messed with. And then we create the token using this descriptor and return the token. Okay, then we have an access token we can return to the front end. In our case, to our, of course, first to our login method here, which returns it to the controller, which exposes it in our API to be used in the front end, where we most likely want to store it in our local storage. I'll show that later. And use it in every HTTP request we do to the API. Every request that needs to be authorized. Okay. So that was not a really in-depth explanation, but let's continue with creating the entity. In our entities hubs class RefreshToken. Let me quickly copy it. Okay, JWT ID expires at is used is invalidated. For consistency purposes, we'll call this linked user ID and add this foreign key. This is identity user. This relies on identity and entity framework. Let me take a minute to think about this, why we have this reference. This is also mostly logic I copied to when building my own apps. I really wanted to start implementing building cool features, but I had to make sure the authentication was set up. So I didn't actually think through everything at the time. It doesn't look like we really need this. Or maybe we can work around it. I like to depend on these things as least as possible, so I'm just gonna try and leave it out right now. Okay. Then we'll have something like this. It's gonna be a fun exercise for me as well to debug this code again. Since I didn't give it too much attention last time. Okay, so we can't access these yet, of course. We didn't add it to the interfaces. DB contexts, let's db set refresh token, refresh tokens, oops, get set, and add this to our data context, and then we should have to create and apply a migration. Public. Let's get rid of these two slashes here. Okay, create and apply migration. This should. Let's first see if we don't have any. Make sure we can run our project, build our project without errors. Oh yeah, of course, I changed this. I changed the order. Should be like this. But I wonder why I'm creating a new auth response when I'm using the auth response here. Let me try to just do this. Should be good. Oops. Okay. Let's do the migration now. I'm going to change this region to create JWT token because we'll add the code to decode the token later. Okay, just add some extra space here. Okay, migration time. Let's call this refresh token. And let's check the migration so it doesn't delete our user roles again or something. Just gonna give it a second to, okay. Okay, that seems good. Create table, refresh token. That seems good. Let's apply it. If you see any attempt to delete the ASP.NET roles or something, remove that part from the migration. Okay. Oops, this is another. I was checking. So we have the table. We're good to go. So that's all for creating a JWT token and logging in. At least not really logging in, but returning a valid response. So actually, maybe we should call this, what should we call it? It is logging in, but it's actually just returning valid tokens to, so we can do all other backend calls we want to do while being authorized, authenticated, authorized. Okay, let's run it and let's see what happens. And then maybe open, so let's run the backend API. And then maybe afterwards we can see what the token contains. We should normally have one user that has his email confirmed. Let's quickly. This is the downside of using this user info ID that you can't see which user this is unless you start looking. Since I'm using the trial version, I unfortunately can't just like search for this one, I think. Can I? So it would be user ID equals, yeah, it's saying a free trial. Okay, but it looks like it's just the last one. So let's just for future purposes, let's do this one. We can, of course, 3 tabs open. We can, of course, check this. Oops, I'm screwing up here. And see that this is tester 26, which was which was the last one we tested, created an account with, and confirmed it, but we didn't have the code. We didn't have the code to make sure this email confirmed was set to true. We should have that code now. And confirm. Let me collapse. That's exactly why I'm using the regions to collapse this stuff. Did we do it correctly? Yep. Okay. Okay, so we run the project. And so this auth endpoint, and we see here we have the user request. I really don't know why it says nullable true. I'm guessing because of the records. Was it tester 26? I doubt it's going to work from the first attempt. Tester26@gmail.com. We want to log in with using the email as username. Ooh, we actually get things. We don't have a user role yet. We didn't apply it. We added the code afterwards. Otherwise, you would just see a string app user, app_user, like the role. Okay, we have a access token and a refresh token. It just worked from the first time. And let's see what this token contains. So let's change this one here, put it here, paste it here. And we have this algorithm. That's what was defined in when encrypting the things. Name ID. That should be our user ID. GTI is that JWT ID, so the random generated ID. issued at an NBF or something we don't care about. Issued at, of course, when it's created. NBF not valid before. It's probably something you can set. Expiration time is what we set. Is in a the tooltip says in 15 minutes, more or less. Okay. And normally there should be some user roles here if we had any. I think it would just be a list of strings with the user roles for the user. We could like go in here and change all kinds of stuff, but since it's not, we didn't add our secret here, it's not going to generate a valid, a usable token if we alter something in here. So that's good that security is there. Feel free to test that stuff. I tested it before because I was actually concerned about that. You see invalid signature because we didn't add anything here. So if you want to create your own tokens to test, just add your. Okay, let's add a user with a user role. Let's call it tester27. Oops, 7. Password. Oops. 3, 4. Language. Okay, whatever that is. Okay. Let me just pause the recording and get into my email. I received an email to activate my account. Boom, and something exploded. Set one of these new users. Let's just do it directly in the database. Just say one. Let's see which one this is. Tester 30. Okay, let's just log in with that one. I'm kind of fed up with this token stuff with the confirmation token. What were we doing? We were checking for the user roles in the token. So let's log in with tester 30. The filter fetch. I wasn't running my database project. Forbidden exception. Probably because I only altered this email confirmed in the user profile. So let's do this in here as well. Try again. If I'm running. Okay, we've got the access token. Let's see. And you just have a role app user. If it were multiple roles, it's probably just comma separated or something like that. Cool. Okay, so next thing would be to decode an incoming token, I guess. Let me just think about it. That's my dogs fighting over a toy. Okay. For that to work, we have to modify some things in our API project. Okay, we have the use authorization already. Let's add maybe authentication as well, or would that be would authorization imply that you can also contain the authentication? Let's just leave them both out for now. I'm guessing the authorization is enough since Microsoft just already put it here. Okay, let's just let's see. Let's don't add anything and let's see how far we get. So let's make an authorized endpoint. Let's make a region. I'm gonna call it get lecture. We have HTTP get. You could say like get me as a user or something. But we're gonna delete it afterwards anyway. Just wanna check the authorized one. You can define roles. That's a string with the roles comma separated. That's why I made the constants. That's kind of why I had these public const strings. That was the format required. Let's uncomment those. And let's do roles with app user access. Just put it there. Oops. Or maybe we should try without first. Well, let's have multiple ones. Custom user roles dot hop those. Let's let's call this just app user like that. And let's have a regular one as well without the roles. Okay. This is just going to be action results. Just gonna test out. Oops. Return okay. Let's test auth app user and test auth. Okay, so if we're not authorized, we'll probably have like a 403 or 401 or something as response. If we're authorized, we should just get a 200 back in our API. Status 200, okay. So let's check it. Of course, I intentionally didn't set up the Swagger things yet to accept an access token. So yeah, let's just see what happens now. For testing purposes, I'm just going to add this to 24 hours actually, because I don't have the refresh token mechanism in place yet. So okay, let's just run it. Okay, we've got auth app user and auth. This one should already be expired. Yeah, we can't really. Let's see what happens. 404. That's a not found exception. Meaning we didn't even get here. It says it doesn't exist. I expected like 403 or something. Let's test the other one just to see what happens. Also a 404. Strange. Let's just make it a little more distinct, like just like this. So we're not actually posting so we're certain we're on the right one. 404. 404. Okay, it's probably something I forgot or missed. Didn't configure yet. Let's see. We have to add some kind of authentication schemes. I think there's a better place to do this, but let's just test it for now. This line seems to be the reason why it's returning 404s, the lack of this line. Which comes from ASP.NET Core Authentication JWT Bearer. This first one. I'm actually not a fan of all these preview versions, but I noticed I installed some of those in other projects. Okay, that works. So now, but this already implies we're passing a JWT Bearer token, which we aren't passing to our Swagger yet. So but we just wanted to get a 403 or something. After some more configuration, we'll be able to pass the tokens. Let's see, this one should just give it 200. No authentication handler. Did you forget to call authentication? Yes, we did. Since it's some setup we have to do. Okay, let's just do it. Get it over with. Let's remove this line, or we might need it. I'm going to add this in the backend project, but feel free to add it in your API project in the startup, in the program.cs. I'm going to add it in the configure services. And it's quite some code. Let's see if we can simplify it a little bit. Have it like this. Oh, we already added this JWT config. But they also want to access it already. Can I just do this? Or should I be able to get it from the services now? I don't like all this code. I have to install it. And I'll want to clean up this code a bit, move it to different places. But let's test it first. Well, let's add a breakpoint and see what this is probably going to be empty or something. We've got a version mismatch. Think. Let's actually just remove it from here. I think it's enough to just add it. Not sure, but I hope it's enough. In my backend project, going to add this package. Let's try 10. Phew, it's running. Okay. And we wanted to see what, of course, null. Um, okay. This binding already happened normally, but let's do something like this. This is lowercase. Oh no. Let's see how much trouble it gives us. Okay, it takes that, but I'm curious to see what's in there. Can we? Let's see. Unnamed options manager doesn't sound good. Yeah, that's null. Let's see if this works. Doesn't. Okay, seems kind of lame that we configure this here and there. Oh, it's still an unnamed options manager, but it does contain what we need. So, it's 200. A 401, okay, that's what we wanted. So it says unauthorized. Let me see if I can clean up this code. I really don't want to put all of this. Should find a way to clean it up. This swashbuckle thingy. Going to copy it over to my backend project. That should allow for that, and then everything at once. Okay, cool. So feel free to pause the video. Let me add an extra space here. This is everything for Swagger, and this will allow us to add a bearer token as a header in our Swagger. So and this seems to be some generic Swagger config, and then this is for the actual security stuff. So a bearer token, it's gonna set this as instructions, a security scheme type of HTTP in the header, and as a bearer token, as an authorization header key value pair. So the key would be authorization and the value would be bearer space and then the access token. And it's possible that we don't have to type in the bearer space anymore. It's just going to do that for us. So let's try it. Okay, so it changed our title, which we don't really like. It's maybe this might be useful. It says GUID should be displayed as strings, I guess. Or maybe we could even specify what a GUID looks like. Or, well, let's leave it out. Let's leave that out. But know that we can change the title and version and all that stuff. But the most important thing we're doing now is all these logs we're seeing and this one. So, enter just your token in the text input below. This it already types. Normally it should be doing like this, bearer space, then the token. Now you can directly use the token. Let's try with this token, which should be expired. Close, and then you see all these logs changed to a closed one, which is a weird iconographic thing, but it means we get a 401, which is good. Normally It's good because which invalid token expired at. Okay, that's great that we see all this information. Let's try get a new token. Okay. Oops. Then we have to log out here, paste the token again, authorize, and let's see. And it's still giving us a 401 while the authorization header is set. This one is normal that we get a 401, but the other one should be giving us a 200. Let's see what happened. Okay, I just paused the video to test something. And we're getting a 200 now, means we're authorized. What I did is just indeed added this app.use authentication for this to work. I had that suspicion, but I didn't know for sure. So, and our app user is also authorized, which is good because the last one we added a role to the last user. Let's add a higher role, let's say roles with admin access, just for testing purposes. Authorize again. Every time we rerun the app, we have to add this access token. Now it says forward 3, which means we're not, what does it even mean? Forbidden, I think, which is alright. But before it gave me a 401. But I guess the 403 is because we are authenticated but not authorized, instead of not authenticated. When you're not authenticated, it will give a 401. So that's all there is for testing our JWT token and with a role. As you see, that's something I have to mention. I'm my also returning the user roles, which is actually also found in the token. I mentioned I did that for convenience, so we don't have to decode the token in the front end to get the roles or do an extra call for the roles. That's something I wanted to mention as well, is some people advise against adding the roles in the token. The alternative would be after well, that you get the roles with another HTTP call, I guess. Mm. The reasoning is the same as before. The unlikely scenario that you accidentally gave too many permissions to a user and you downgrade the user in permissions. And for that, as long as the token lives, the user will still have, for example, the admin role when it shouldn't have it. So that's why they say it's bad practice to do that, but I don't mind it. Okay, that's all there is for that. I want to clean up this code, move it a bit, if I can, of course. And the next thing would be to refresh a token. We made we haven't set up that code yet, but I think that would be the last part of authentication on the backend side, at least. After the possibility to refresh a token, we can actually start. Maybe I want to touch on the policies, user policies. But let's do that together with the front end stuff. Hello, hello. Let's clean up these things real quickly. We can do this similarly as we did with the identity config. Make a static class and a void that returns these things. You could argue maybe you just want all of this in one place for reasons, but I'm going to move it. Trying a few more things since we added all this configuration. We can remove the add swagger gem. This I commented out as add controllers because I want to try something to do with exception handling. So I added these controllers here. Doesn't really make sense in here, I think, but let's just try it. I added a attributes folder and going to add this class to it. If you can see it, exception. Okay, that took long to load. And I copied this over from the Jason Taylor's clean architecture. Let's see. Unauthorized access exception. Feel free to pause the video or just go to Jason Taylor's clean architecture API, find the attributes, API exception filter attribute, and type it over. So let's see this override exception. Some more methods. Okay. What I'm trying is to see if this impacts our duplicate user email validation exception. Okay, let's try it, rerun it, and let's try to recreate an existing user. Let's see, I'm gonna remove this to do. These add controllers. Okay. Let's go to the register one. Tester 30 at mail.com. Sorry, my dog was barking. Doesn't matter what we put here. This should throw an error. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, and this shows a real nice error. Auth error, email address already in use. Okay, this is nice. Before we just had a very long stack trace, only telling us where it went wrong, not exactly what went wrong. So It's these error shows, and it's nicely caught by this exception filter. That's lovely. I should have showed you sooner, but yeah, I mentioned before, a lot of code I just copied and didn't really think twice about. So yeah, another reason for not doing this sooner is I didn't want to overload the videos with boilerplate code. It's not really boilerplate code, but pre-made code by someone who's way more experienced. Code I can't really. I could if I tried, but I don't feel like diving into everything. But that's a real nice one. Okay, let's close all this. This backend is now really shared backend project is really assuming all our backend projects are APIs. So if we add different types of backend projects like console apps or worker services, background worker services, I probably not want to depend on this backend project, maybe only on the libraries, maybe the database if we want to, for example, web scrape data and then save it to our shared database, something like that. Let's implement the refresh token functionality. But first let's clean up our AuthController a little bit with the remaining time. I think we've proven the point of authorization. It's working, so let's just get rid of it. Next time you'll see authorization code, it will be something to implement, will be an implementation. Also, this one we should revert back to a method that can be an endpoint that can be called by the front end. Reverting this back to from body and removing these since they'll be in the body. But we'll do that when we're building the front end. Okay. So refresh tokens, it's going to need an endpoint as well, of course. Okay, let's add this on the bottom. It'll look like something like this. Have this response. I don't know why I did this in my previous project. It should be like this. And let's make a refresh token request in our shared common folder. Requests auth refresh token request. I should have made a record again. Keep forgetting it. Okay. We'll just have a string access token, string refresh token. Should be enough. Okay. And then add the method to the service. Our service can be found in, oops, let's close it all, in the backend. And let's make a new region. I like this region and stuff. RefreshToken. I might not be using it correctly, but it's just something I like to do for visual reasons. Let's paste it. It's a lot of code. A lot of code I didn't write. Okay. That's a method. Let's context new station token. Okay. Let's see. Let's make this method. Let's add JWT here. Let's make these methods. I'm just gonna paste them in the same region underneath. It consists of two methods, getClaimsPrinciple and hasValid algorithm. For some reason I didn't copy this well. Okay. So this getClaimsPrinciple would return a validated access token currently. Let's see. It gets a probably an expired access token. And here we have these token validation parameters. We move those to a config. Something like this. It's not ideal, but this JWT secret should get it out of here. Okay, something like this. Possible null reference. Principal or null. Okay. Okay, the hasValid algorithm. Just checking. It's kind of the verify method I talked about before. So we can't just make up our own tokens and accept it or something. So it's gonna check for the right algorithm and whether it consists of our secrets, I guess. Something like that. Close enough. Okay. And then there's a lot of code here. Let's add this to our interface. API auth interface. Oops. And that's just a lot of checking what's happening. If there's no valid access token, forbidden exception. We're getting the claims out. Let's see. GTI is that random JWT ID generated token. Stored refresh token is checking the database. Where there's a refresh token with this JWT ID, which is coming from this claim. But not exactly. Okay, I thought this would be used in here. No. Checking against the request body refresh token. Because I'm guessing this isn't the whole refresh token, this is just a JWT ID. If I'm not mistaken, if we look at where we return the auth results, we are turning this JWT ID. So maybe let's fix that in the request. Let's maybe fix that. Or what should we do? Because of course we call a refresh token this entire row, which is just a record in the database. It's not like this is a refresh token. Yet we call it refresh token probably for the ease of use. So let's keep it at that. It's not entirely correct, but okay. So we're looking for one in the database. Where this the JWT ID is actually, this is actually also the JWT ID, but we called it refresh token. But it's not really ideal, the naming, because now we're getting the record, which we name stored refresh token. So yeah. Should we rename it? Let me know in the comment section below whether you want to rename this for clarity. And then we do all sorts of checks against the expired thingy. If the refresh token is expired, we'll want the user to log in again instead of just refreshing the token. If it's invalidated or is used, or something doesn't match, we're gonna say forbidden. That it's an invalid refresh token because we could have, I think I combined this if. I think this if was like 3 different ifs, and they all had their different log warning, but I combined them to one, which is less clear, but Yeah, I didn't want to have a massive if statement. Probably this was an if statement and said, oh, valid token expired. That one said, oh, it's invalidated. And that one said, oh, it's used already. I don't know why this is, what the function is of this exactly, but okay. Or if something's wrong, but I combined it. Could have made it a switch statement, maybe. Whatever. Let's find the user. Where the name identifier, that's the one I used instead of the sub. So this actually contains the user ID, and we're trying to retrieve the user by ID. So if it doesn't work, we log it and throw forbidden one. So potentially we've probably, this might happen, I think, when we're using a development token in production or something, but it should have already errored against the JWT secret. But anyway, if something's wrong, if we don't, maybe user is deleted or something. Yeah, something like that. But the token is still used, if that's a possible scenario. Say, we'll set this one to used. We'll update the stored refresh token, save the changes, and generate the result, which contains the access token, a new access token, new refresh token, and user roles. Okay. The user roles seems quite weird in this context, but as I mentioned, it's for convenience. Okay, that's all there is. Let's check out the AuthController. And if we hooked everything up, okay, let's run that. And let's try to refresh a token. I've got another one open. Oops. Let's try to refresh this token maybe. Oh, but we need a refresh token, of course. So that's not gonna work. Let's log a user in. tester30@gmail.com. Let's see, do we already have some tokens? Looked, oh yeah, we have 3 tokens. But I see the is used is never, I've never seen this is used set it through, so I don't really know what's happening there. Let me check that's sensitive data, I shouldn't be doing that. Okay. Let's see. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. Log the user in. We have got a forbidden, which is weird. Tester 30. We're not registering. Trying to log in. Oh yeah, okay, forgot a capital T. Okay, success. And now to refresh, what do we need? access token and the refresh token, which is actually the access token, and the JWT ID of the refresh token. And we've got nice, this user roles, app user, if success is true. This is success statement is kind of, should actually would be a better practice, I think, if it's not successful to like have an error code instead of 200 and a success false or something. But okay. Refresh token. Let's see. And okay. We've got a different refresh token now. So we actually refresh the token and we've got a different access token. If we now do it again, let's see what happens. Shouldn't. Okay, it's forbidden. That's good. It's probably run into some of the validation. Probably run into some of these forbidden exceptions, of course. Let's see what the database says. Okay, and we have the one is used indeed. But it's invalidated. Never happens, I guess. And this one's probably the new one. So yeah, user ID is specified. We don't need an actual link to the user like we did before, I think. Okay. Did we miss something? So can refresh the token. I think it's all there. I hope you're able to replicate it without errors. Let's quickly rename this one. Generate auth response. Oops. Response. Just so it matches our response object. Okay. And all that's left is in the front end, we'll need to find a way to add this token to the headers. This JWT access token, to add it as a header to authorize the needed requests. But this is kind of all there is to JWT access and refresh tokens. What remains is the methods that are quite similar to the ones we already made. But I'm not going to film all of them, record all of them again. Let me see if I can just paste them in and maybe you can copy them, but it's quite similar as I think it's only resend confirmation email, reset password email, and those methods you should be able to figure those out, but I'll paste them in for you. So let's start by resending a confirmation email. This could be used in the front end. Yeah, this send mail email will probably want to move somewhere else. Oops. I see resend confirmation email uses this send confirmation user email. This is gonna be response, of course. Response true. Oops. We'll have to make this request. All this does is find the user by email, because you'll probably have a user interface where the user can click like, oh, I didn't receive the email or something, or and then is prompted to enter his or her email address in the user interface, and then we're going to find that user. If we can't find it, it probably doesn't exist. And not found exception, of course. If it's already confirmed, we are going to throw a forbidden exception, or we could maybe just return or something. And the happy path is to send the confirm user email again, and this just calls this method. So that's great. The only thing we need to do is make this request, and we'd probably want to let's make a record this time. We would probably want to, what was I going to say? Validate those things. Yeah, this is probably just going to be string email, nothing else. Okay, we'll have to add this. Let's first add that. Resend confirm email request. Okay, I misspelled it. Refactor. I like the name, but okay. Let's just. It's weird that I have to refactor it twice. Okay, let's add it to our interface. It's also using this endpoint. Okay. Why is this? Okay. And we'll do the same thing for reset password. Let's make a new region for it. Oops. Region set password. I notice I'm using multiple methods that rhyme. So got this reset password, send reset password email, I send reset password mail. It's awfully alike those method names. And then I also have the reset password method. Let's see. Response, this one should be identity user. Send email, okay. This is the let me see. Of course this should be true. And come on. Oops. Okay. I'm not really understanding why send reset password email and send reset password email is so alike. This is the task and this is actual sending. And then this reset password is actually when the user clicked his email open and clicked the link we sent him. This actually, let's move it down because just like to keep the order, this one happens first, then this one's called in here. Probably because we're reusing this, it's all right. Let's make this contact type for now and email body. Send mail doesn't. Probably because we changed the method signature. Let's see, confirm user, send confirmation, send confirm user, send mail this one, send mail. Yeah, we just have to just probably move this out, which is kind of lame to. I'll tell you again, I'm not using these regions correctly, but I'm using them like methods. Let's call it send mail. For some reason, the send mail isn't working because these should be up like this. Let's clean this up. Like this. But why isn't this send mail? And this one says send email. So that's probably a bug I introduced by removing that one and recreating it. So email. Okay. Let's create a requests that is so record send reset password email request, send reset email password email request. Probably also just a string email. So add this one to the interface. And next one is set password request. Okay. Set password request records, and this one has a, let's see, linked user ID maybe, or would this be string token? This token is the one included in the email, and the link in the email. This has nothing to do with refresh or access token. This is a token generated and here generate password reset token. We sync and a string password. This linked user ID is probably just going to be user ID. Because we don't. Okay, let's add it to the interface. All of those aren't used yet, of course, because we didn't set up the controller endpoints. Oops, let's see. AuthService. We're clearly not using this one yet, so what did we miss? This doesn't seem. Ah, yeah, okay. I know what we missed. Not really missed, but we I created an auth-based service because I had multiple auth controllers for multiple front ends that, like I mentioned, most of the code was the same for both services except for the register one, and I had to override these endpoint URLs. So, but that's not really important right now. What is important that we're probably going to just pass these, but where did I use this one? Okay, here. So that means, oh, that's the register method. Let's remove this breakpoint. So that means we have to change this one here, and this one becomes obsolete, this parameter. unless we move it to an auth-based service and override this one. I'm inclined to do that. Oops, what did I do here? I'm in the wrong method. Should be here. Should be something like this. But okay. Let's do that next. All these requests we'll probably want to validate in the future using fluent validation. You could, oops, why isn't this a record? Let's see, user ID, oops, let's try this. Okay, we'll want to validate these probably with fluent validation. If those were classes, you could probably use the default validation using decorators, but a bit like we used attributes. Anyway, let's not focus on that right now. Let's copy over the controller methods just to finish off. We're going to revert this one so it's ready for our front end. It didn't seem to be working in the backend anyway last time we checked. Like that. And then methods we didn't add yet are the following. Oops, what's happening here? Delete should be, oops. The delete one is using current user service that we haven't made yet. Hey, there might be one last thing I want to close this off with. That's some kind of current user service, also found in the JSON Tailor's Clean Architecture API template. Let's just implement it. The idea is that you have an endpoint in your AuthController. Get endpoint, perhaps, yeah, doesn't mean it's not needed. We're going to use this current user service wherever we want, but let's illustrate it with a get endpoint and have it like something like me. Let's just do something like profile or something. And this needs to be authorized, of course. And let's return this should then be current user service. Oops. Current user service. But we still have to make this one and inject it. So start by making the interface. I'm going to make it in my backend project, but you can create it straight into your API project if you want. To keep it simple, I current user service has only two properties, user ID and user roles. And of course we need a service that implements this. Class I current user service. Let's implement those. Okay. And the ID of this service is that it gets the user ID and the user roles from the access token. So we saw the ID and the roles were included in the access token. So this one extracts, this class extracts those values. To do that, to access this access token, we'll need the HTTP context accessor, make a constructor, initialize it, and to get the user ID, remember we stored it in the name identifier of the JWT token. So we're getting it out, accessing the user on the HTTP context, and find first value where claim types is the name identifier. So name. Okay. And the roles is pretty similar, only that it's highlighted possible null reference, whatever. We find all claim types that have all the roles from, we get the value, so that's going to be returned in a list of strings for every claim type we find. This user object, claims principal. To understand more about this, you'll have to go back to our AuthService, auth base service. I refactored the whole thing, and I think back to the get claims principal. Or actually where we create a user. It's in here that we add roles to the JWT token. Anyway, would like to explain more about it, but I'm not, I didn't research it too well. I'm just gonna show how to implement it and access it, and it's going to be useful in multiple services or controllers. Yeah, sorry for my dogs. Oops. And let's see what we can do here. Let's see, so we should have the user ID equals user ID and the user roles equals user roles. Could we just return it like that? It's probably going to be an okay result. Let's try to return a tuple. I don't think it's user roles. User roles is kind of a list of strings. Let's try it like that. We didn't have to put them in variables, but just for demonstration purposes. We didn't register this one yet, so let's go to the configure services. I can remove the token validation. And let's add one like this. Probably only have one current user service. Could have one in the front end, but it's up to you how you name those services. Okay, like this. Let's see if we can run it. And oops. So we need to log in first, since we don't have any access token stored or anything in our local storage. Test 1, 2, 3, 4 should give me an access token. Okay. With this access token, I should be able to authorize. Oops. And now I should. Let's hope it works from the first time. And it does not. Okay. Let's can't we do something like new? Would be useful. Does this work? It's just an object. Let's see if that works. Let's try the same authentication token. That's valid. Okay, so I added the I'll do it again because I ran out of recording time again. Let's just execute it, and you'll see user ID and the user roles for the current logged in user. This is really useful in other controllers or other wherever you want. There's quick access to the user ID, the current user that is logged in, his or her ID and user roles. And while we're at it, we could use this in our pet social DB context to fill up these entity. So every time we create or modify an entity, that we know who did it. That's a useful thing to have. Right. Okay, it should be like this. Like this. And while we're at it, maybe we can fill this one in as well. but I don't actually see the benefit of this datetime service, except for just doing this, but it will probably have a good reason, something with request scoping or whatever, I'm guessing. So add this datetime service. Is this called correctly? Have it datetime service. That's just gonna return public. Is it datetime or what is it? Just now set. I think it's just going to do this time, but now it's never used. Okay, let's create an interface. datetime service just has a datetime of now set or something like this. Okay, oops. I don't really know, but okay, let's see. Sorry, the interface would be something like only get. Okay. Then we'll have to also configure this. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually configured as transient. Let me see. Transient just scoped means similar per request. Transient means similar. Sorry. Scope means different per request, and transient different per every time. And singleton is always the same. Let me maybe fix that, or it the project might even complain while I build it. Datetime service. What's this? Come on, I mean to initialize the field, and then we finished that. Of course, I registered this in the backend project, not in the database project. It probably wouldn't make sense to add scoped in the database project, but I'm not can tell you much more about those things, I'm afraid. Okay. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to show.